Hello, everybody. This is our first shot at something we're going to call Bull Shark Sessions, and we're excited to kind of start this avenue with a friend of ours named Tim Neuman. Tim is the owner, the president of Soft Lite Studios, and an avid underwater photographer, and has won many international photography awards. So we welcome Tim. Also joining us today is Heather Glon, and Heather is working on a PhD studying anemones, and Lori Williams is also on today, and Lori works for Aquatic Adventures, and we're welcome to have everyone, and this is exciting. So, Tim, you take photographs, and one of the photographs that we have in the store, and for people that have visited our retail space, is all those photographs hanging on the walls above the BCs belong to you. And one in particular is a picture of an anemone shot at night, showing fluorescence. And Heather, I'll let you introduce yourself briefly, but you study these things.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm, like Brian was saying, I'm a PhD student at Ohio State University, and my research involves sea anemones, mostly cold water anemones, but my lab has a lot of research questions with other anemones. So fortunately, I get to experience all types of different species. So the photo that Tim has, I don't know if you can bring it up on the screen there, Tim.
Yeah, let me hop over to that real quickly. It's kind of been one of my favorites. There we go.
Awesome. Yeah. So I had been eyeing this in the store, and I don't know what species it is. I can tell you it's a burrowing anemone, so they don't actually stick to rock. They'll like push their column in there and hang on to the sand. And then if you get too close to them, they'll retract in, which makes it tricky for photography when you're trying to get a shot of them and they all of a sudden disappear.
Absolutely.
But do you want to tell us a little bit about what you used to get the photo?
Well, this is taken with a Canon 5D Mark IV with a 100mm macro lens on it, and that's pretty standard. The gear that's very interesting here is that in order to get these guys to fluoresce at night when this is shot, you have to excite them with a really intense blue light. So you're taking your strobes and your focusing lights, and you're putting blue filters on the front of all of them. And then in order to cancel out that overpowering blue, you put a yellow filter on front of the camera lens to balance the two out. And then you get this display like this. You also take your dive light, put a blue filter on it. You take your mask and you put a yellow filter on the mask. And for me, it was kind of like going back to a Pink Floyd concert, although maybe with a higher state of consciousness when I was diving here. Good. The only other notable thing I would throw in on top of this is poisonous sea snakes like blue light too. So it's a bit of a challenge to find the species that you want to shoot and not have species find you.
Man, that's interesting. Now, where were you when you took this photo?
This was near Dumaguete in the Philippines. And you're exactly right. In a sandy shelf area, there was a whole bunch of them. And, any proximity of diver to subject, they are retracting into the sand. So it's a slow process with a lot of patience to get into one that wants to hang out with you for a little bit.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, scientists, we're not sure why some of them fluoresce and some of them don't. We know that some of the anemones, they produce green fluorescent proteins. And there might be a couple different reasons from an evolution standpoint why they might do this, whether it's like a metabolism byproduct that's just produces this fluorescence. It could be a sunscreen. So anemones are kind of like corals, where they have these symbiotic zooxanthellae that they keep in their tissues and help them get food and energy from the sun. Not all anemones have them, but some of them do. So some of those might be fluorescing. It could be an attractant for prey. They might be attracting small little fish over with a little bit of light. Or it could be, and some of them fluoresce, people have noticed with corals at least, that they seem to be around like damaged tissue of corals. And so that I found interesting when I found that, where it's almost like an antioxidant and it fluoresces. So I'm not sure what.
That's pretty wild. It's very intellectual. I feel a lot like Bill Engvall. Sure is pretty.
And we just appreciate the beauty of it. So
I
not
think,
much of an explanation, but it's still good.
and Tim, you've obviously done a lot of different work underwater, and if people that have been in the shop can see the array of different pictures. Why did you get into underwater photography? What called you beneath the surface to take photographs?
It's the combination of the exotic forms and the colors. You just can't find those colors in nature above the water and those exotic forms. And that was the driver. And that has drugged me all over the world. You know, I don't really think in terms of where I'm going to dive as a destination. I think of, I want this species, where is it? And that's been my driver for chasing them around. But I kind of have a target list of various images that I've seen that I'm like, oh, I want that picture, or I want those colors in that shape. And that's the driver for me. I love that.
What's at the top of your list right now?
Gosh,
One of them.
sea dragons that are off the coast of New South Wales. And as a cold water diver, that trip would be right up your alley. As I'm getting older,
it's at the top of my list as well.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys are amazing. I did see some in the Atlanta Aquarium. They've got some down there, and they're just spectacular. And I think getting some really nice close-up images of those would be awesome.
Awesome.
So we have a lot of folks. I think one of the things when I started to do a little bit of photography underwater was, to your point, it's kind of the hunt of finding what you're set out to look for and capture an image. I think there's a lot of divers that we interact with that want to get into photography. Are there any recommendations, Tim, that you might have for hey, what does somebody that's getting into this need, and maybe more importantly, what do they not need in order to start taking some photographs?
Well, I'm not good at not need, because I need everything, right? And if there's an accessory out there, I need it. So I'm probably the worst person about that. No, but from a starting point of view, you know, while you're getting used to it, I'd recommend staying relatively lightweight and small. And I think that the critical components to me are a camera and 2 lights. And if you have those 2 things, then you can control light and you can really set the scene and get the picture you want. That can be as simple as a GoPro, a bracket on the bottom, and a couple of arms to hold a couple of light and motion lights for that. And that could be something that literally can be thrown in your backpack and go on the plane with you. And it's not a huge amount of money, and it doesn't impact your entire trip. You know, when you start to get really absorbed in this hobby, I'm actually paying more for my luggage to go with me on a trip than I'm paying for my airline seat sometimes, because as you get further and further into it, you get more and more gear. You know, it's like I started off with a camera, and then let's do a wide angle lens, and let's do macro, and let's do night photography, and let's do red focus lights and blue focus lights. And so you can have this hobby grow with you forever, but you can start off on a really straightforward, you know, portable, compact end of the spectrum, and pretty inexpensive too. The stuff that, you know, the shop has readily available.
Is there anything that, you know, once you get the camera and the 2 lights, and are there any subjects that you think beginners should go after? Is there one that might be easier to focus on and get shots than others?
I would generically say work on stuff that's closer before you work on stuff that's further away. The closer you are to your subjects, typically the less movement there is if you're focusing on something in a coral head. The less water column there is between you and the subject, the less likelihood there is for backscatter, the more control you have over the light you bring to the party. And let's not forget, if we go down 60 or 70 feet, we're losing a lot of that ambient light,
right.
so we can bring our own back to the scene. So those closer shots, you get more control over that. When you start to widen that up and you're like, oh, I'm going to get the shark, right? Lighting is a different story. Exposure control is a different story. It's not impossible. It's just upping your skill. So I would say start close and work your way to wider.
Super. And I think all of us as divers know how critical buoyancy is in diving in general, but even more critical in photography work. And it's something that we can at Aquatic Adventures help people with, is buoyancy on top of photography. I think those are two things that go together really well. And
absolutely, buoyancy is critical to underwater photography. I mean, if you think about it, the water column's moving, you're moving, and the subjects are moving. Any of those things that you can eliminate from that formula make it a lot easier to get the picture.
Right. I know that you've been posting a lot of stuff on YouTube, and you know, our bull shark sessions are short sessions, and we know you do a lot of work after the shot is taken, and we want to make sure that we give you time to share kind of what you're working on from a YouTube social media campaign. So do you have anything that you'd like to share on the screen for everyone?
Yeah, let me bring up, this is the admin side of it, but I think it provides for a little bit better view of what's out there. This is, okay, come on. Every time that you say you're going to share something and then it goes somewhere else. Go there. I may be on the wrong tab.
You got it. There you go.
Got it? Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. I'm not seeing it. So are you seeing YouTube videos?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm seeing your channel videos.
Okay, awesome, because I'm not seeing it this end. So it's under Soft Light Studios if you're searching for it. And I don't know what we have out there right now. There's about 120 videos. A lot of them are focused on Lightroom tips and techniques and Photoshop tips and techniques. And during this whole coronavirus epidemic thing, we're posting a new video every day now, just as kind of our public service thing to keep people entertained while they're locked indoors. But you can go out there and find all sorts of stuff. And, you know, if you want to post comments or messages, or I think there's a little message thing that's even going to go at the bottom of this video when we're done. Let me know topics that you're interested in. We're always putting new stuff out there. In fact, right before you guys called, I was producing the next video that's going to go up today. So we're doing that. We also have classes that we routinely run in the store on underwater photography and Lightroom and Photoshop editing for underwater photography. So if you decide you want to get into it and you're like, wow, I've got this whole pile of stuff here, and what do I do with the lights, and what do I do with the pictures when they're done, that's something that we can help with.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I would encourage everyone to check out some of this work. And that kind of brings us to maybe a possible next session where Tim can maybe walk people through an image and some of the editing and cleanup of an image once it's picked, how to crop it, getting the right color balance, etc. So we look forward to another session. And thanks for being the first, and we appreciate your time today. And again, if you want to get into photography, Tim is a great resource of information. We sell gear at the shop, Aquatic Adventures, Ohio. And if you want to take a class, we have Tim that can help teach those classes and help educate us all on how to take better pictures underwater. And of course, buoyancy, if you're interested in taking an advanced buoyancy class or even learning how to dive, please reach out to us and let us help.
Awesome.
Heather, more images. You need more images, and we need to try to stump you on some identification of those images.
All right, it won't be too hard, but we can talk about identification at another session, perhaps. So.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Tim, Heather, and Lori. I wanted to thank you guys, and have a great afternoon, and good luck with the next video, Tim.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
All right.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.